Oh yeah. Hmm. What do you think of that? Hi, I'm Pony Horton. Welcome to Pony's Transmission Vlog episode number 3. I'm old, I'm trans, get off my lawn. Today is week 2 of my hormone replacement therapy. There haven't been too many changes from last week other than my emotions have been easier to express. They've always been there, but like if I have to like start crying when I see like a video of some poor injured dog that's been left out on the street to die, well, I'm going to still cry about it, but it's easier. It feels good to cry rather than emotionally wrenching or painful. I don't know if that makes any sense. Other than that, yeah, I'm still sleeping with the covers off. I feel warm. Beyond that, no real change that I've been able to notice. So that's it for week number 2 of HRT. And now, time for Pony Show and Tell. This week, oh wait a minute, let me get off. Go, 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 go. Thank you. This week, I have here a rivet. This rivet came from the North Tower of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was installed there in 1937. Removed sometime just a few years ago. My friend Ken Hopper, who was a well-known bridge worker, in fact here you can see a plaque dedicated to him, Hopper's Hands. That's Ken and I together. He gave me this. This was removed as part of upgrading the bridge to nuts and bolts and removing the old rivets. So, piece of the history of the city where I was born, San Francisco. The prettiest bridge in the world, Golden Gate Bridge. Well, what I want to discuss today is this deals with my perception of my identity as a trans person, a trans girl, if you will. I think I've said it before, I will never consider myself a woman. I'll always consider myself a girl, simply because I'll never experience the things in life that a woman, either cis or trans, will experience. I'm way too old for that. At most, I'll experience what a female might get to experience, a woman might get to experience in her 20s. And, women of that age have their whole lives ahead of them to experience all the things that they're going to have to deal with being a woman, whether they are trans or cis. I won't experience that. I'm near the end of my life, and again, I've got the get off my lawn attitude. I just don't generally care what people think, and it doesn't affect me. I consider myself, and this is politically incorrect, I know, especially to a lot of younger trans people, and if this offends you, I apologize. I consider myself what used to be called a she-male, a chick with a dick. That's how I think of myself. Not in any derogatory sense, it's just that describes exactly how I feel. I feel like I am a she and a male. I feel like I get the best of both worlds, assuming I can get the breast development that I want and the facial development that I want. We'll see. But that's how I think of myself. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see why people should feel it's politically incorrect or get upset about me self-identifying in that manner. So that's how I think of myself. As far as sex and sexuality goes, well, I expect I'll still be pansexual. I'm sexually attracted to all genders. And I don't think that'll necessarily change, especially not at my age. So, as far as sex itself goes, well, that just depends upon, who in the dating pool might be interested. You never know when it comes to that, and being trans does narrow the dating pool considerably than just being a gay man. I've dated my share of transgender people. I think the first person I dated was somewhere back in the early 1980s. And this was a transgender girl over in West LA. And then there have been a few others since then over the years. Just that I've simply gotten fortunate enough to meet some of them who were trans. Not that I necessarily sought it out. Just opportunity arose, and there you were. I'd like to talk a little about therapy. People of my generation have an interesting relationship with the idea of therapy. When we were young, we grew up with things like the Bob Newhart Show. Therapy didn't seem so strange to people of our generation coming up in our teens and 20s. Whereas to our parents, it was still pretty taboo. If you went to therapy, there was something wrong with you. It's not like that anymore. If it hadn't been for therapy, I would not have allowed the final egg crack to start living as trans. I had already come out as trans. I came out in January of 25, and I started therapy only a couple of months after that. And in my mind, I was starting therapy to deal with my symptoms of clinical depression, and so I was seeking some form of prescription medication that would help towards that goal. And the therapist or caseworker that was working with me, a very nice young lady, she complimented once one day on my earrings. I was wearing my usual hoops, which are about an inch or so and a little more than an inch in diameter. And she said she liked them on me, and I said, I buy these 5 or 6 packs of them at Walmart, and they go from small to really big. The big party girl hoops that I want, and I use the word ghetto, excuse me, but those are the hoops that I'd love to wear, but I just don't have the courage to do it. She said, well, you better get the courage, because you're going to wear them here next week. I did, and that was when the dam finally broke, and I started wearing makeup, and well, I've always dressed in this manner. Here was my dress influence. My dress influence was the movie Fame, the way these kids looked. I was that age. That's how I dressed then, and that's still how I dress now. Athleisure and t-shirts, and this t-shirt says Scranton. It's from the TV show The Office. The back of it looks like this, and this is one of my favorite t-shirts. I have all kinds of t-shirts, all kinds of things on them. As the show goes along, you'll see them. Now, as far as therapy goes for some of you folks, I don't know how you'll access it depending upon where you are. In most cases, if you have access to the internet, now obviously you're just going to Google it. As to whether you'll have access to actual therapy where you are, that I don't know. It depends upon where you live, whether you're in a city or a small town, what state you're in at this point in time. You know how bad things are. But if you're in a really rural area with no internet access, I don't know. You may have to end up using, ham radio so that you can get those radio transmissions. Blucher. Do people need trans role models? Yes, I think that they do. I know that I have some trans role models. I think obviously positive role models can only help. Another question you need to ask yourself is, what do you want for the remainder of your life? Me, I want to present as mostly a girl, but if people look a little harder, they might see that I still have my male genitals, and I'm fine with that. But for the most part, I'd like to look like this, as you've seen. But again, part of that has to do with regret. I don't want to be on my deathbed regretting that I didn't explore this other side of myself. Again, your experience may vary, your mileage may vary. That's just how I feel about it. Now, will your old relationships change? That's a big one for those of us who are over 50. A young kid who's transitioning, just starting out, they've only had a few years to make friendships. They're not as deep as those of us who've had 20, 30, 40 years to make long-lasting friendships. So with that longevity comes a much greater fear of losing those friendships. Obviously, when you're young, you don't want to lose friendships either, but it's not going to generally be the end of your world if you're 18 and you've come out as trans, and some kid that you knew since, junior high school says, well, I don't think I want to be around you anymore. Yeah, it's going to hurt, but it's not going to end your life. You're at the beginning of your life when you're transitioning at that point. You have a whole life ahead of you to make new friends and long-term friendships. For those of us over 50, it can be a real question, and it's a chilling one. I've been fortunate. All of my friends and loved ones, with one exception, have been good about it. One exception doesn't know, as far as I know yet. And that person is the only real problem. That person is someone I love very much and have known for longer than anyone else that I have known. However, this person is a fundamentalist evangelical Christian and really has no tolerance for my femininity as it is. This had probably just sent him over the edge. So If he finds out, if he sees this channel, well, then I'll just deal with it, you know, at that point in time. Otherwise, he's in his mid to late 80s, and I don't want to ruffle his feathers any more than, you know, is necessary. So, yeah, if you want to come at me in the comments, come at me in the comments. I get it as I'm being a coward, but we'll just, you know, I'm gonna leave it live for the time being. Anyhow, so, you know, we've covered some. We've discussed our emotions. We've discussed the idea of like calling myself a she-male. We've discussed sexuality. We've discussed with some people I've dated. We've discussed therapy, how it helped me, and hopefully how it might help you if you're able to access it. We've discussed trans role models, and again, that's an important thing. You know, role models are an important thing to have. When I was young, I didn't know any trans people, and my role models were macho men. I mean, you know, my role models were guys like, you know, Gene Kranz and Ward Bond and Harrison Ford and the Duke, and John Wayne. You know, I mean, I can't imagine just, you know, if I said to, if the Duke were alive, and I said to him, Duke, I'm a transgender girl, he'd probably come up behind me and say, "Shut up, you old fart, and bite that wagon wheel." Being trans is like being in the desert. It's a tough kind of place. Everything out here will either bite you, stab you, or sting you.